All right, everybody, try again. We're back for Relentless Talk Radio. This is episode 33, which is and segment 4, which is the entrepreneurism episode. We're talking with Marcos Garciaacosta today. He's the entrepreneur of the moment. And so, Marcos, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you. Happy Friday, everybody, and thank you for having me here. My name is Marcos, as you mentioned. I'm a business attorney, and I specialize in entrepreneurs, small, medium business, startups. My slogan is I'm the attorney for the creative classes. So I love to talk to people that have new ideas, that are trying new things. The crazier your idea, as long as you have the passion and the effort behind it, the better. And that's what I do. I help people with their all their business and personal issues, especially related to protecting things. So it can go from your business, your ideas, your intellectual property, your personal assets as well. I try to work with the entrepreneurs as a whole, not only for their business, but also all the aspects in their lives.
I love how you and I met. We were at a Yes Phoenix conference.
Yeah, I was in Chandler.
It was in Chandler, and we actually met in the parking lot.
Yeah, but we were at an event.
Similar dress.
Yeah, and I guess that is the magic of the red dress, huh?
Yeah, I was literally on my way to the car, and you guys were too. And I just, complimented her in her red dress. And I had just actually gotten a letter from someone about my company, Fearless Deliver.
That's true. Yep.
And I was concerned because the name of her company and my company were similar, and what we were doing was somewhat similar in some areas. And she happened to be an entertainment attorney, so I knew she could sue me all day long. So you and I became instant and have no fees, right? So you and I became instant friends, and it led to me changing the name of my company, my over company, to Micalizzi Enterprises. And I'm working with you to trade name Micalizzi Enterprises, Relentless Talk Radio, and so we have all that in the mix so that I don't have to ever go through that again. So it's funny.
Yeah. I absolutely want.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to tell people that one of my first recommendations, and that was one of the things I remember I told you, is before you start running and promoting a name for your company or for your product or service, make sure nobody else has it. There's two reasons for that. One is to avoid the problem that you had.
Yeah.
And the other one is...
with my company, there was nobody using my name for what I was doing at the time, right? Yep. So when I started my company as purely a consulting company. So then what happened was, as I added art into my mix, I didn't search for Fearless with artists, because at the time I started my company 6 years ago, art wasn't part of my mix. So what happened for me was I did all those searchings for a consulting company, and I was stellar, great. And I had started the practice of getting my trade name, because you have to be using a trade name to get it trademarked. You have to be using it, right? So I had started that process. But when I added art into my mix, that's when I ended up having a problem, because I added art into the mix a year into my company's name. So prior to starting my company, I did everything right, but I changed the way I was operating a little bit. And I had some add-ons, and in doing that, that's where I ended up having a rub. So that can just happen. You do everything right, and not have things go your way. So, but to your point, doing a national name search is a really important thing to do when you start your company.
Yeah, it's definitely important, and one is to avoid the problems, and the second one is to avoid promoting somebody else's brand. Because let's say they don't come after you, but you develop so much, you invest so much on that, and people get to know the brand, but then they start getting confused with the other one, and you're creating brand equity for them. So you want to make sure that you keep those things into consideration. And I guess the third thing, and this is something that you started in one point and then started migrating into another, that is called in the industry, brand extension, where you may have, I don't know, Nike. They had shoes, and then they went into sports equipment, and they go into clothing, and then maybe they have lotions and a bunch of other things. So you want to make sure you have a roadmap for your brand. It's like, okay, I'm going to be doing these, but I may be doing these things. And that way you can avoid, or at least be aware of, the obstacles you may face in the future as your brand grows and expands into other areas.
You know, it's funny, as you're talking about that, I'm trying to remember back to when we met. It's almost 2 years ago. At the time, I knew that the word fearless was going to start causing me issues because of my fashion line. And so I hadn't gotten the letter yet. And I was reaching out to you to say, hey, you know what? I got a feeling about this word fearless, because when I started my company, the word fearless, nobody was using it. Now you go into the airport, and there's health insurance companies talking about fearlessness, right? So the things were changing, and I knew it was time to reach out to you. So I actually reached out to you proactively before I even had a problem. And it was like weeks later, I got the letter. I'm like, see, I knew it. I just knew there was going to be something going on. So you and I became instant friends, and right away we said, you know what? If I'm having these types of things happen, and I'm an educated businesswoman who did my work in advance, what about the people who haven't done the work in advance, right? Yeah. So you and I are doing a series of seminars to educate business owners, and we're going to use my experience as an educational tool for folks. As I'm doing my branding, we're gonna share about that. I'm live on Relentless Talk Radio, but we're also gonna share it with other business owners, our process, and with my brands. Micalizzi Enterprises being my over brand, and then my offshoot brands. So we have a workshop coming up on September 12th. It's going to be here in Phoenix. We hope it's going to be at a certain place, but we're waiting to get confirmation back on whether that place has got room or not. We will let you know the location in Phoenix, but save the date for September 12th. And the other date is November 14th, and that's going to be in Mesa. And we have a location, but we have to confirm that location. So you can go to the event section on Relentless Talk Radio to find the locations, but do save the date of September 12th and November 14th for an intellectual property seminar where Marcos will be teaching us about intellectual property and the things that you can do. I'm really lucky. I found this error I found this misalignment early before I spent $13 million on my brand. It's good to catch things before you have to really, it's a really bad, expensive thing. And all that being said, it still was expensive and time consuming for me to change my brand 5 years in. But if it had happened 18 years in, where I had a significant following and you know, I had product that had my name on it, it could have cost me millions. So I'm really grateful to find the misalignment now so I can move forward. But we're going to try to help other business owners to not have the situation that I had come up, and also to avoid having a situation with their current brand they're currently working with, or if they're in the startup phase, to make sure they work with you proactively to make sure that your brand is right. So everything that I'm doing forward under Micalizzi Enterprises, one of the first emails I write is to you saying, hey, Marcos, what about this name? Is that a good idea or not? Right? And let's put that on the list.
And I definitely do that a lot with other entrepreneurs. And a lot of people, unfortunately, have their branding checking, you know, after they have invested and developed their business. Unfortunately, you know, sometimes it's never too late, extremely late, but they have to kind of spend resources on getting everything in a new direction. My recommendation is spend a little bit of time up front. Just do the exercise of, okay, what is available, what is not available, and also, you know, what is your roadmap, and then start spending the money on all the registrations, all the other registrations, like your company registration, your website, all that, so you can have an idea of how aligned all the things are to your name and the brand that you want.
And to the point, like I had service creep, right? Where now I know if I add anything new to my mix under my brand, I have to call you and say, Marcos, I'm going to add fashion to this brand. Is that going to be okay, right? Yep. So the reason why you and I went with Micalizzi Enterprises is that more likely than not, I'm going to be okay with my last name. but still we're checking Micalizzi fashion, Micalizzi art, Micalizzi gives. We're checking all of those things to make sure that we haven't got, you know, some Micalizzi somewhere on the planet who's doing something similar. I mean, it's crazy, right? So every time you have scope creep, you need to relook at your brand and decide, is it make sense to have your scope creep happen under your current brand, or do you actually have to create a separate brand for that scope?
So that is a very good observation, and in the classes that I teach, I go through those exercises. And there's a lot of big companies that, you know, we can spend the whole day just talking about that they have their company brand or company name that may or may not be as known, and then they have a lot of products or services under their own brand, and you would never think that they come from the parent company. So those are, and then there's other companies where other organizations where the company is the brand, like Nike, Apple, all those guys, but that doesn't have to be the case.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I used to work for Revlon in New York City, work with Revlon. They were one of my clients. And did you know that Coleman is a Revlon brand? Coleman, the tent company? So any given day, I could be retouching a model's ass. Or I could be working, and then in the next moment, I could be doing something about camping.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think that with Revlon's case, they bought the brand and put it under their umbrella. But you know, the reason why I chose Micalizzi Enterprise is that I have several things that I do, and they're all being separately branded at this point.
Yep.
So eventually, you'll go to, like, Gary V has a website with all of his brands that are listed. They're all separate brands. So eventually, when you go to Micalizzi Enterprise's website, there'll be an icon for each one of my brands. Each one of my brands has a separate website. So that wasn't my plan when I started Fearlessly Deliver. But now that I'm 5 years into business, I've had to reorganize my thoughts and my branding based upon where I'm going now, right? With the radio show, with the 4 pillars, with my creativity, with painting versus fashion design. So you and I are working together on that. So what's your best advice to a startup? Did you just give it?
Well, this is going to sound a little bit ironic, or maybe, I don't know how much out of place. You know what you can do and what you want to do. Okay. So it has something to do with a passion, but let's say, and again, you don't need to know how to do the whole thing, but at least you need to have some value on the whole process. Once you have that, then test it. Okay. I got a lot of people that said, "Oh, I have the idea of, I don't know, making some salsa." Like, do you know how to cook? Like, well, no. Do you have somebody that can make the salsa for you? Well, I need to find somebody. Do you have, so what's the secret sauce? Not to the salsa, but to your business plan. So the same thing, if it is an application, you know, find somebody or make sure you can write the application. Sometimes you need complementary skills, but test it. Okay, the worst thing that you can do, and you know, all the experts out there are going to tell you the majority of the failures in companies are because you have a product or a service that nobody cares about or that nobody knows. There may be a lot of problems throughout the process. Once you know how to do something, like, hey, I can do great, you know, designs or great clothing, perfect. Can you make money on that? You know, is this a hobby or a business?
I do a little research, right? It's funny. I was talking to Tim Hilco from Smart Wrap last week, actually, and he started a company that was a true startup. That was something that nobody would just Google. They don't even knew about it. And he decided, kind of as he developed the company, after he bought the printers and got the equipment that he needed to start this company, he realized that this is not a go. And so Smart Wrap actually was created out of repurposing the equipment that he bought for a different company that he realized wasn't a go. So I mean, that can happen sometimes too, right? You've got, you know, you have a great idea, and I've had this happen a couple times. Great idea, maybe it's the wrong time. Great idea, you haven't got the right players. Great idea, something changes in the economy. Great idea, something shifts. Well, that's just reality. You can't be afraid of making a mistake. You got to just go out there and try something. But every
Uh,
time you get a not go, that not go always leads you to a different go.
so in the technology industry, they call it pivoting. So you start in one point and then you turn and there's a lot of examples both on the original intent of the company as well as how they were doing things. And you got Twitter, that the original people from Twitter and the investors were not trying to do what Twitter is. They were doing something different. Same thing with Facebook. The original application of Facebook was something different. Amazon was going to be selling books. Now they are selling everything. Now
I know, right? They totally.
they
There's a
have,
perfect example of
yeah,
Site Creek, right?
yep.
Do you know one of my favorite company stories when I was a financial advisor was Shell. Do you know what Shell was before it was an oil company?
No, what was it?
It was an antique store.
Oh, so
So
here is
go,
another one. Coach,
go ahead and
do
look
you
that
have a
up.
bag? Do you have a Coach bag by any chance?
I don't have a Coach bag, but I have Coach
Okay.
glasses.
Okay, Coach. The symbol of them is the Coach, stay Coach, basically.
Right.
So they used to be a company that made, I believe, metal parts for fabrication of, you know, those things,
The
those
Coach
coaches,
coaches, right?
the stage coaches. Yeah,
And then
and then they
somehow
were.
they built a bag somewhere along the line. They realized that's where they're at. That's a perfect example of like, how my business is developed is that I just have tried things and found out what worked, found out what didn't work, and kind of keep moving along. You know what I mean? If you had told
Yeah,
me
and
10 years ago I'd be doing a radio show live on Facebook that went to YouTube, went to podcasts, and went to internet radio, I would say, why would I do that? Where?
yeah,
I mean, what are you
absolutely.
talking about? The technology wasn't even around. I mean, the fact that you and I are in two different locations right now talking on Facebook Live, I can put it on YouTube, which goes to the entire planet, and that YouTube can be put into a podcast so you can listen in their car, and then I can apply to a radio station. It used to be that you had to beg to get on a radio station to be able to have people hear about you, but our world has changed so much that it's just it's an interesting thing. So, what do you think your biggest lesson has been in business?
Well, that's a good question. And this is a little bit outside just the pure business, but look at all the ingredients. Look at life and business
Mm-hmm.
as different ingredients that you have on your kitchen. Okay, and think
Mm-hmm.
of you coming to your house and you got all this stuff laying around. Maybe there are some leftovers, or maybe it is, limes are in season, whatever, and try to come up with ingredients that are unique. So I think that could be, look at the opportunity, look at what you got, and look at what you want to do, and then make sure you can make some money out of that and just do that. They call it the circle, and it's just kind of common sense. But this is the important thing. And just like you said, there are things where the technology was not available, so you had to rely on other things. And keep an eye on those technology waves because they are going to be changing the things that you're doing right now. One of the biggest, I was listening an audiobook. I think it's called The Long Tail, and it
Mm-hmm.
talks about how, you know, everybody talks about how technology changes everything. But for example, they talk about how Sears, the store that is disappearing little by little, they were
Right.
basically the Amazon of the 19th century. So it's almost, over 120 years ago that it was founded, and you could buy everything via catalogs. And one of the advantages, or one of the things that they took advantage of, was the mail system in the United States, which is probably one of the most efficient in the world. May not be the best, or maybe it is the best, and that's a lot to say, maybe. But it was back in those days, you could send a letter and it would get somewhere, and then they would send you something back, and it was pretty reliable. and if you were in the middle of nowhere, and you could do those transactions. So it is very similar to what is happening online, especially with Amazon. They had Sears had these before they had stores. They had warehouses for distribution throughout the country, and you would think that the best positions, the best one's position for taking advantage of the technological changes, should have been those companies, but they didn't. They missed the opportunity.
Well, you know what happens is we get comfortable in the way we do stuff, right? And there's been a lot of stories about companies that just get comfortable and they stop looking for what's new and different that's happening, and they miss the bus. So that's a really good lesson right there, is to make sure that you stay on top of the technology.
It is very, very understandable for somebody to be comfortable and not want to make any changes. If you're a big company, if you're a huge company like Sears was at its time, or Walmart, or Kmart, okay, how can you blame them? I mean, they make billions of dollars a year. But if you're a small guy like you and me, you got to be on your toes. And if you see these waves coming in, you got to jump in. Otherwise, it's just going to sweep you off the beach.
Well, and we'll end with this. When I was in grad school, I read the book The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman.
Yep.
It was one of the required readings in one of my courses. And one of the things that he said really has always stuck with me. He said the people that are going to make it in the new economy are the ones that are going to be able to change on a dime. And I find that, like, just this week I'm making changes in my business is based upon new information. You know what I mean? You have to be willing to take a look at the data and the behavior and the reality as it's coming towards you, and shift and pivot and do a jig and stand on one foot and rig your ingredients in your refrigerator to come up with a solution. If you can't do that, then maybe you're better off being an employee and not an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. And even if you are an employee, you need to realize all those changes are happening around you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's going to affect you, whether you like it or not.
There's a lot of kids come out of school that are ready to take your job in a heartbeat.
And it's not only the kids coming out of school here in Phoenix or in the Arizona area, but there are kids coming, everywhere in the world that are coming with ideas, some projects, some funding. I heard this at an investors conference, that if you come to me with one idea, okay, it was a venture capitalist. He said, there's already 100 people with the same idea somewhere in the world.
Right.
20 of them are already working on it, and 3 of them already got funding.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, all that being said, you could sit on a bar stool somewhere saying, I've got this great idea, and don't do it because it's going to be too hard, too difficult. You have to, there's a balance between being too afraid to move forward and being paralyzed and being totally fearless and maverick and a little too crazy. You have to just kind of decide which a part of those things you're going to be and just jump sometimes. And, you know, maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe it does. Maybe you're the next Apple. Maybe you're the next, you know, you just never know. Hey, Marcos, if somebody wants to hire you, how do they get a hold of you? Well,
they can talk to you for one, or they can talk to me. They can call me at 480-324-6378. They can also go to my website, legalbizglobal.com, or they can also Google me. You know, I think I've done a decent job with getting up there in the rankings. So if you look for, you know, business attorney in Chandler, or business attorney Marcos, things like that, then most likely I'm going to be the one.
Well, I appreciate your time today. I'm looking forward to working on these 2 seminars with you. We're going to let people go today. I really do appreciate you coming on Relentless Talk Radio. I look forward to
thank you.
What we're going to do. So have a good rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. And best luck on when it's going to be your competition that you're doing.
Sunday. I have a bikini competition, the OCB Slayer Classic on Sunday.
Sunday, where?
Sunday at the Herberger Theater. And it starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'll be competing with 38 other crazy, relentless, fearless women. So I'm looking forward to it. It's been a 22-week training to get ready for the show.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. That's definitely got a lot of learn from you, lady.
Well, it's all about the health and fitness pillar on Relentless Talk Radio. So it's my way of drawing attention to take better care of yourself.
I'm gonna go and do that right now at the gym. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Carlos. Have a good rest of your day and happy weekend.
You too. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.